Hello everyone, I'm Daniel. Today our group is going to introduce psychoanalytic approaches to personality. On this topic, we have divided into 6 parts to explain. Number 1 is fundamental assumptions of psychoanalytic theory. Number 2 is structure of personality. Number 3 is dynamic of personality. Number 4 is psychosexual stages of personality development. Number 5 is personality and psychoanalysis. And finally is why psychoanalysis is important. We look forward to your listening. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurul Atikah binti Abdul Aziz. I will present about fundamental assumptions of psychoanalytic theory. Basic instinct, sex and aggression. Freud's original theory of instinct was profoundly influenced by Darwin's theory of evolution. In Freud's initial formulation, there were two fundamental categories of instinct, which is self-preservation instinct and sexual instinct. These two fundamental categories corresponded exactly to two major components of Darwin's theory of natural selection, which is selection by survival and selection by reproduction. Later, in his formulation, Freud collapsed the self-preservation and sexual instinct into one, which is called the life instinct. After witnessing the horror of World War I, he developed the idea of a death instinct. Freud postulated that humans had a fundamental instinct toward destruction and that this instinct was often manifest in aggression towards others. The two instincts were usually referred to as libido for the life instinct and thanatos for the death instinct. Although the libido was generally considered sexual, Freud also used this term to refer to any need-satisfying, life-sustaining, or pleasure-oriented urge. Similarly, thanatos was considered to be the death instinct, but Freud used this term in a broad sense to refer to any urge to destroy, harm, or aggress against others or oneself. Freud wrote more about the libido early in his career, when this issue was perhaps relevant to his own life. Later in his career, Freud wrote more about thanatos when he faced his own impending death. According to Freud, the human mind consists of three parts, which is conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. This is the iceberg metaphor of the human mind. The conscious part is what is above the waterline. The preconscious is what is below water but still visible from the above. And the unconscious is the largest part, is the part that hidden well below the surface. The conscious mind is the part that contains all the thoughts, feelings, and perceptions that you are presently aware of. Whatever you are currently perceiving or thinking about is in your conscious mind. These thoughts represent only a small fraction of the information available to you. For preconscious mind, it contains memories, dreams, and thoughts that you could easily bring to mind if you are so desired. For example, what were you wearing yesterday? And what was the name of your best friend in high school? Whatever information that you are not presently thinking about but that could easily be retrieved and made conscious is found in the preconscious mind. Based on Freud, the unconscious mind is the largest part of the human mind. Nothing happened by chance. There is a reason behind every act, thought, and feeling. Everything we do, think, say, and feel is an expression of our mind. Freud introduced the idea that the little accidents of daily life are often expressions of the motivated unconscious, such as calling someone by the wrong name, missing an appointment, and also breaking something that belongs to other. Freud thought that most symptoms of mental illness are caused by unconscious motivations. Freud wrote about the case of Anna O. Although Freud did not directly treat or even meet Anna, her physician Joseph Breuer consulted with Freud. At the time, Anna was a 21-year-old woman who had fallen ill while taking care of her sick father, who eventually died of tuberculosis. Anna's illness began with a severe cough and later included the loss of movement in her right side, disturbance of vision, hearing, and inability to drink liquids. Dr. Breuer diagnosed Anna's illness as hysteria and developed a form of therapy that appeared effective in relieving her symptoms. This form of therapy consists of Breuer talking with Anna about her symptoms and in particular about her memories of events that happened before the onset of the symptoms. For example, in talking about her severe cough, they talk about her memories of caring for her father and the severe cough he had from his tuberculosis. As she explored these memories, and especially her feelings toward her father and about his death, her own cough lessened and disappeared. Similarly, when talking about her inability to drink liquids, she suddenly recalled the memory of seeing a dog drink from a woman's glass, an incident that completely disgusted her at the time but about which she had forgotten. Soon after describing this memory, she asked for a drink of water and immediately regained her ability to drink liquids. Deliberation without awareness. If a person confronted with a difficult decision can put it out of his or her conscious mind for a period of time, then the unconscious mind will continue to deliberate on it outside of the person's awareness, helping him or her to arrive at a sudden and often correct decision sometime later. For simple decision-making, conscious deliberation would work best, but for complex decision-making, which involve many factors, then unconscious deliberation would work best. Example, deciding the best car. Subject in the simple condition consider 4 attributes of the car, whereas subject in complex condition consider 12 attributes of the car. In the conscious deliberation condition, subjects were asked to think about the information for 4 minutes before deciding on the best car. In unconscious deliberation, subjects were distracted for 4 minutes by being asked to solve the anagram puzzle, then immediately asked to decide the best car. In simple decision condition, with only 4 attributes to consider on each car, subjects who consciously deliberated made the best decision. But when the decision was complex, involving 12 attributes, subjects in the unconscious deliberation condition made the best decision.
In structure of personality, we will discuss 3 main points on the subtopic, which are id, ego, and superego, and also how these 3 works together to form personality. For id operates according to the pleasure principle. When we talk about pleasure, we can think of feeling happy or satisfied from doing or getting something. For example, when it wants something, it will do anything to get it without considering any consequences. I will give an example on this. So from this gift, you can see this person is eating donuts. But then it says that it wants to eat a lot of donuts, so it will do anything to satisfy the urge. The consequences from eating a lot of donuts can be wasting your money and exposed to physical health problems such as obesity and diabetes. Those are the consequences that it is ignoring to achieve the pleasure. Next, it also operates with primary process thinking, which is thinking without logical rules of conscious thought or an anchor in reality, which basically means unconscious thought. When the urge of it is not satisfied in reality, it may create a mental image or fantasy of the object or person that is not available from the urge. This process is called wish fulfillment, which only works temporarily to gratify or satisfy the it for a short period of time. For example, when you want a lover or partner, but you cannot get them that easily or quickly, you will fantasize about having a lover or partner. When you fantasize about it, you will feel satisfied for a short period of time. Before I go to the next slide, I would like to highlight 3 important keywords to understand the concept of it. The first one is pleasure principle. The next one is primary process thinking. And the last one is wish fulfillment. The next one is ego. Ego is the part of the mind that constrains its reality, which means that when it has the urges to do something, ego will bring it back to reality, whether it is logical or not to do that. We can refer ego as something neutral between it and superego, where it is more on the evil side and superego is more on the good side. Ego operates according to the reality principle because ego understands that in reality, everything that we do have consequences. According to Freud, ego develops within the first 2 and 3 years of life. This is why when babies want something and they cannot get it, they will cry or throw tantrum until they get what they want. Because the baby still has not developed an ego, which is the rational part of the mind. The next one is ego works to postpone the discharge of its urges until appropriate situation arises, which means ego will prevent the urge of it from doing or getting something until the right moment or situation. Ego engages in secondary process thinking, which is a development of strategies for problem solving and obtaining satisfaction. If primary process thinking is an unconscious thought, secondary process thinking is partly conscious and partly unconscious because it is considering about the urges and also the reality that will happen from doing the urges. In conclusion, ego is the part of the mind that helps to balance between it and superego because ego works partly conscious and partly unconscious. For superego is the part of the mind that internalizes the values, morals, and ideals of society, which is why we associate superego as to something good. Superego is often referred as conscience or moral compass. Conscience is a person's moral sense of right and wrong, which viewed as acting as a guide to one's behavior. Superego develops as a child learns what their culture or religion considers right or wrong. For example, in Islam, we cannot drink alcohol because it is haram, and alcohol can bring harm to our bodies such as physical health problems. Superego is usually instilled into the child by various socializing agents such as various school and organized religions. So, adults should raise children with a higher moral standards so that they will grow up to become a better person. In conclusion, superego is the part of our mind that makes us feel guilty or ashamed when we do something wrong and make us feel proud when we do something right. So the next one is interaction of the id, ego, and superego. When a person is facing an internal conflict, these three parts of the mind are in constant interaction. Each of them have different goals, provoking internal conflicts within an individual. Consequently, one part of a person can want one thing, whereas another part wants something else. For example, like for it, I want to do that right now, but superego said, no, it's not the right time to do that. And then ego will make a decision about what is the right thing to do to satisfy it and superego. Lastly, this image shows that superego and it works as the unconscious part of the mind, while ego works partly conscious and partly unconscious.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. My name is Maizatul Alia binti Jafridin. I will present about dynamics of personality. There's a few types of anxiety. The first one, objective anxiety. The second one, neurotic anxiety. And the third one is moral anxiety. Objective anxiety. What is objective anxiety? Objective anxiety is fear. Anxiety occurs in response to a real external threat to the person. For example, being confronted by a large, aggressive-looking man with a knife while taking a shortcut would elicit objective anxiety, which is fear in most people. The second one is neurotic anxiety. Neurotic anxiety occurs when there is a direct conflict between the id and the ego. The danger is that the ego may lose control over an acceptable desire of the id. For example, a woman who becomes anxious whenever she feels sexually attracted to someone, who panics at even the thought of sexual arousal, is experiencing neurotic anxiety. Moral anxiety. Moral anxiety is caused by a conflict between the ego and the superego. For example, a person who suffers from chronic shame or feeling of guilt over not living up to proper standards, even though such standards might not be attainable, is experiencing moral anxiety. A young woman with bulimia and eating disorder might run 3 miles and do 300 sit-ups in order to make up for having eaten a forbidden food. People who punish themselves, who have low self-esteem or who feel worthless and ashamed most of the time are most likely suffering from moral anxiety. From an overly powerful superego, which constantly challenges the person to live up to higher and higher expectations. Defense mechanism. In all three types of anxiety, the function of the ego is to cope with threats and to defend against the dangers they pose in order to reduce anxiety. The ego accomplishes this task through the use of various defense mechanisms which enable the ego to control anxiety, even objective anxiety. What is the function of defense mechanism? Functions, the first one is to protect the ego and the second one is to minimize anxiety and distress. There's a few of major defense mechanisms: repression, denial, rationalization, displacement, reaction formation, projection, and sublimation. Repression is to refer to the process of preventing unacceptable thought, feelings, or urge from reaching conscious awareness. Repression was the forerunner of all other forms of defense mechanism. Depression is defensive in the sense that, thought through it, a person avoids the anxiety that will arise if the unacceptable material were made conscious. From his clinical practice, Freud learned that people often tend to remember the pleasant circumstances surrounding an event more easily than the unpleasant ones. He concluded that unpleasant memories were often repressed. Denial. Denial is when the reality of a situation is extremely anxiety provoking. A person may resort to the defense mechanism of denial. Denial involves refusing to see the facts. A common form of denial is to dismiss unflattering feedback as wrong or irrelevant. Displacement. A threatening or an unacceptable impulse is redirected from its original source to a non-threatening target. For example, a woman who has an argument with her supervisor at work, she is really angry with the supervisor. So she goes home and displays her anger onto her husband, perhaps yelling or nagging at him. Real displacement is an unconscious means of avoiding the recognition that one has certain inappropriate or unacceptable feelings toward other person or object. Rationalization. Rationalization it involves generating acceptable reason for outcomes that might otherwise appear socially as such unacceptable. In rationalization, the goal is to reduce anxiety by coming up with an explanation for an event that is easier to accept than the real reason one. For example, a student who receives a failing grade on a term paper might explain it away by stating that the teacher did not give clear direction for how to write the paper. Reaction formation. In attempts to stifle the expression of an unacceptable urge, a person may continually display a flurry of behavior that indicates the opposite impulse. Such a tactic is known as a reaction formation. An example, a man who is angry with a girlfriend, but the anger is not conscious. He is not aware of how angry he really is. It is raining outside, so he offers her his umbrella. He insists, even though she keeps refusing. Here is replacing his hostility with apparent kindness. According to psychoanalysis, this dynamic can often be found when defense are being used. People may try to cover up their wishes and intention and yet unwittingly express them. Projection. Based on the notion that sometimes we see in others the traits that and desire we find most upsetting in ourselves. We literally project our own unacceptable qualities onto others. We can then hate them instead of hating ourselves for having those unacceptable qualities or desires. For instance, a person who always insults others by calling them stupid may, in fact, harbor some insecurity about his or her own intelligence. The last one is sublimation. Sublimation is the channeling of unacceptable sexual or aggressive instincts into socially desired activities. A common example is going out to chop wood when you are angry rather than acting on that anger. Watching boxing is more desirable than beating someone up. The positive features of sublimation is that allows for some limited expression of the id tendencies, so the ego does not have to invest the energy in holding the id in check.
Hi, my name is Nur Hanifa Khairuddin. I'm going to explain about the psychosexual stages of personality development. As we know, the psychosexual stages was built up by Sigmund Freud. Freud believed that psychosexual development in childhood takes place in a series of fixed stages called psychosexual stages. He believed that human life was built around this concept of tension and pleasure. So, this tension developed due to this concept of libido, and it can cause a lot of conflicts. Each stage represents the fixation of libido on a different areas of the body. Freud believed libido or sexual energy was the driving force behind behavior. Each stage is associated with a particular conflict that must be resolved before the individual can successfully advance to the next stage. How the individual resolves this conflict gives rise to various aspects of his or her personality. Fixation occurs when the individual is unable to resolve a particular conflict and their libidinal energy becomes stuck at a particular stage of development. When fixation occurs, it can have a lifelong effect well into adulthood. So, if fixation occurs at a certain stage in childhood, it could have a lasting effect into adulthood. Alright, you can memorize the order of these stages using the mnemonic on the right side of the screen. It's called Old Age Pensioners Love Grapes. O stands for the oral stage, A stands for anal stage, P for phallic stage, L stands for latency, and lastly grapes, G stands for genital stage. Now let's see the different parts of body that libido will be focused on. For the oral stage, the libido is focused on mouth. Then for the anal, it changed to anus. For the phallic stage, the libido is centered on genitals. The latent does not have libido. And the last stage, the libido focuses on genitals again. I will go through first and explain more detail in a bit. So the first stage is oral stage that occurs between the age of 0 to 1 years of age. During this stage, infant obtains pleasure satisfaction by investing libidinal energy through their mouth. According to the Freud, the infant has to complete the weaning process in order to further the next stage. The adult who is fixated in this stage may display a few of personalities such as smoking, overeating, and nail biting. For the anal stage, it occurs between the age of 1 to 3 years. During this stage, a child has to learn toilet training successfully, and this development task can bring into adult fixations such as orderliness and messiness. The third stage is phallic stage, which involves a child between 3 to 6 years of age. The major development task is resolving Oedipus complex for the boys and Electra complex for the girls, which can lead to vanity, recklessness personality, self-obsession, and sexual dysfunction if the individual is unable to resolve this conflict. Next, the latency stage occurs between age of 6 to 12 years. The major developmental task is in developing socialism and defense mechanism, and also there is no fixation occurs on this stage. The last stage, which is genital stage, when the individual is age of 12 and above. The major developmental task is by achieving mature sexuality intimacy. We can say the completion of this stage could lead a person in order to have a healthy sexuality relationship and mentally healthy life. Now, I will explain all of these stages in more detail. For oral stage, where the libido focuses on infant's mouth. So the infant's primary source of interaction occurs through their mouth, through rooting and sucking reflex. That means the infants automatically turn the face toward the stimulus and make sucking and rooting motion with the mouth when their cheek or lip is touched. Obviously, the mouth is vital for eating, and infants derive their pleasure from oral stimulation through activities such as tasting and sucking, biting, and chewing. And because the infants are entirely dependent on their parents, who are responsible for feeding them, they also develop a sense of trust and comfort through this oral stimulation. The conflict in this stage is the weaning process, which is the process of stopping feeding the baby with the breast milk and introduce the baby with the complementary foods. So the child has to learn to wean off in order to further the next stage. The completion of this stage leads the baby weaning away or simply moving away from breast milk, and the baby must become less dependent on its parent. Once the infant is successfully weaned, it will proceed to second stage of development. The result of individual being fixated in this stage can be seen through oral behavior, such as smoking, nail biting, thumb sucking, or pencil chewing. As mentioned earlier, the infant develops a sense of trust and comfort through the oral stimulation. Therefore, Freud believed the infant that had fed often enough despite of crying and hungry can lead to adult fixation. They may display characteristics of overly dependent, whereas they may want to be babied, to be nurtured and taken care of. There is another possible conflict of the oral stage that is associated with biting. For the example, after the child grows teeth, they can obtain pleasure from biting their siblings or others. If the parent is too lenient in order to prevent the child from biting others, the child will be fixated on this stage and might develop adult personalities such as aggression, hostile, quarrelsome, or mocking in order to satisfy their pleasure. Next is the anal stage, and this stage occurs between the age of 1 to 3 years. The libido here is centered around the anus and in controlling the bladder and bowel movements. During this stage, the children obtains pleasure from defecate. Parents tend to start disciplining children in this stage on where to defecate, also leading to the development of authority in children. The main conflict in this stage is toilet training. The child is now fully aware that they are a person in their own right and that their wishes can bring them into conflict with the demands of the outside world, which lead to development of ego. If parents are too strict or begin toilet training too early, Freud believed that an anal-retentive personality may develop in which the individual had mess and obsessively tidy. They can also develop traits like punctuality and respect for authority from this stage. They can also become stubborn because when they're toddler, they had the opportunity to say no and to refuse from defecate, and also had the opportunity to disobey what their parents said. That's why they may become stubborn in their adulthood personality. In other hand, if the toilet training is too lenient or liberal, then surely the individual may develop the traits of disorganized, messiness, becoming rebellious, and this sort of personality is called an anal expulsive personality. Next is the one that highly controversial stage among the other stages, which is phallic stage. In this stage, the libido is focused on the genitals. The children become interested in his or her genitals and in the genitals of others. According to Freud, the child in this stage develops an unconscious desire to possess the opposite sex parent and to eliminate the same sex one. That means the little boys fall in love with their mother and little girls fall in love with their father. But they feel more than just parental love. That was said by Freud. And Freud came up with two important terms which are Oedipus complex for the boys and electro complex for the girls. Now let's look at each of these complexes in a little more detail. The name of Oedipus complex is from a character in Greek mythology where each of a young man kills his father and marries his mother. Freud said Oedipus complex begins because the young boy developed unconscious sexual desire for his mother and to possess his mother exclusively, and get rid of his father to enable him to do so. However, the little boy also feared that father will be known and punished for these feelings by taking away the thing he loved most, his penis. This fear of losing his penis is called castration anxiety. This castration anxiety leads the boy to repress their feelings and decides that the best he can do is to become like his father and go find a woman who can satisfy their needs later in life. This process of wanting to become like his father or his daddy called identification process. For the little girls, the situation is quite similar and a little bit different. Briefly, the girl desires her father but realizes that she does not have a penis. She desires her father yet at the same time envies him for his penis. This is called penis envy and it is the counterpart of castration anxiety. The girl resolves this by repressing her desire for her father and substituting the wish for a penis with the wish for a baby. The girl represses these feelings and identifies with the mother to take on the female gender role and go find a man who can satisfy her needs later in life. Back to the previous slide, the successful resolution of the phallic stage is actually through the identification process. Children develop traits similar to their same-sex parents. For boys, they are copying and joining in masculine type behaviors. For girls, this includes copying and joining in feminine and mother type behaviors, such as playing dolls. Freud believed that the resolution of this conflict was the beginning of both the superego and morality. The individual that unable to resolve this conflict and being fixated at this stage may lead to a vain personality, self-obsession, recklessness, sexual dysfunction, and can even be a leading source of homosexuality. The next stage of psychosexual development is called the latency stage. This is stage in which occur between 6 to 12 years old. During this stage, the libido is the one in which there is no libidinal energy focused on any part of body, and no further psychosexual development takes place during this stage. So, this begins around the time that the children enter the school. During this stage, the libido is being inactive because most of the sexual energy are repressed and sublimated towards other interests, such as schoolwork hobbies and friendships. The child energy during this stage also is used for developing new skills and acquiring new knowledge. This stage is really important in the development of social and communication skills. The major development task during this stage is defense mechanism, where the children primarily playing in other children of the same gender in order to comfort themselves. So, there is no fixation occurs during this stage because of the inactive libido. So, the last stage is the genital stage, which occurs between years of 12 and above. The libido begins to become active again because this is the period which the adolescents reach sexual maturity and become capable of reproduction. This stage lasts throughout the rest of a person's life. So, in early stages, the focus was only on individual needs, but in this stage, their interest in the welfare of others so. The libido becomes too active again because the individual starts developing strong sexual desire. During this stage, they develop the sexual maturity towards the opposite sex. The successful or the completion in this stage leads to living one-to-one relationship. There really isn't any other fixation because it's under the assumption that all these other stages were complete successfully. The individual that being fixated in this stage is individual who had become stuck and unable to resolve the conflicts at the other stages. If the other stages have been complete successfully, the individual should now be well balanced, mentally healthy, and having a healthy sexual relationship. So, the goal of this stage is to establish a balance between the various of life areas. So, this is like an overview of Freud's theory of psychosexual development. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Psychoanalytic Idris. I will present about personality and psychoanalysis. First, we will go through psychoanalytic. Despite of being a theory of personality, psychoanalytic is a method of psychotherapy, a technique for helping individuals who are experiencing a mental disorder or even relatively minor problems with living. It is also can be said as restructuring the personality of a person. Next is technique for revealing unconscious. Goals is to make unconscious conscious. For aims is to identify these unconscious thoughts and feelings and to enable the person to deal with the unconscious urge, memories or thoughts realistically and maturely. Due to the dynamic nature of human mind, these conflicts or restrained urge may slip out of the unconscious ways that cause trouble. For example, when we feel angry at someone but we cannot let it out because we know that we might end up with fight, but unconsciously we might show our sour face towards the public. This is why they made these techniques to reveal unconscious feeling. There are two types of technique which are first, free association, and second, dreams analysis. We will go through one by one. First is free association. What is free association? Whenever we heard this technique, we will think we are in a relaxed position, comfortable chair, you will let your mind wander and say whatever came through your mind. The chances are you might say things that surprise you or even embarrass you. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack technique. For example, I want to know more about Atika because she always have that grumpy looks. So it makes me wonder why she always look like that. But I am not close to Atika, so I need to make Atika feels comfortable with me first. Then she will tell me what I want to know about her. The sessions last 50 minutes and may be repeated several weeks, and also may continue for years. Why does it take so long? Just imagine you as therapy were able to resist your urge to censor your thoughts before speaking, so do the patient. They also will think before they speak. Goals in free association are enable patients to identify unconscious material that might cause unwanted symptoms and to help them cope with that material in an adult fashion. During the session, psychoanalysts must recognize subtle signs that something important has just been mentioned, like a slight quiver a word is pronounced, false start, nervous laugh, or a long pause. An effective psychoanalyst will detect such signs and ask the patient to stick with that topic for a while. It's like psychoanalyst is digging through all sorts of material in search of clues to past conflicts and trauma. Next, dream analysis. Thinkers always speculated about meaning of dream. It's like dreams are messages from deep regions of mind that not accessible during waking life. In 1900, Freud published a book named The Interpretation of Dreams. Freud proposed that dreams was to satisfy urge, fulfill unconscious wishes and desires. For example, a person dreamt he is riding a flying horse. Does it feel like nonsensical? But for Freud, it is a no, because the dream contains wishes and desire in disguised form. In dream analysis, it is a technique to reveal the unconscious material. Freud maintained that we must distinguish manifest content, what the dream contains or the storyline of the dream, and latent content, what the elements of the dream represent or what is the hidden meaning of the dream. For example, having a dream about killing one's father might disturb a young boy who is having an audible fixation. What is audible fixation? Audible fixation is a child's feeling of desire for his or her opposite sex parent and jealousy and anger towards his or her same-sex parent. For example, a young boy might feel jealous with his father whenever his father attached with his mother. Although dreams often appear to be ridiculous, but to psychoanalyze it might contain valuable clues. Freud called dreams the royal road to unconscious. According to Freud, dreams serve three functions. First, allows for wish fulfillment and gratification of desires. Second, dreams provide safety valve by allowing a person to release unconscious tension. Third, dreams are guardian of sleep. Even though the patient goes through a lot in a dream, and although tension is being released, there was no anxiety is being aroused and the person remains asleep without disturbance. Next is the process of psychoanalysis. With the help of free association, dream analysis and projective techniques, which is reinterpreting the visual stimuli in patient's dream during dream analysis technique, psychoanalysis gradually comes to understand the unconscious source of patient's problems. Patients also need to understand the unconscious dynamics of his or her situation. The patient is led to view problematic thoughts, dreams, behavior, symptoms, and feeling because all of these are unconscious roots or restrained urge. There are 4 stages in process of psychoanalysis. First, psychoanalyst will ask something that can trigger the patient, which will lead to insight. Insight is more than a simple cognitive understanding of the intrapsychic basis of one's trouble. In simple words, we are trying to gain an accurate and deep understanding of someone. The question that we can ask that can trigger them is like, for example, could it be that the reason why you always stay silent and away from your friends is because you're afraid that you might be an annoying friend to them? Second, therapists will poke the patient by using free association and dream analysis. As we know, free association is like we're digging for clues about past trauma, and dreams analysis is an unconscious material that to be expressed in real life using symbols in dream. Third, the forces to repress in disturbing impulse or trauma has worked and patient will reach resistance stage. The resistance it may come out with all sorts of clever ways to misdirect or derail the psychoanalyst. For example, the patient will not pay bills, go very late to session, and even forget appointments. Whenever resistance occurs, it shows that progress is being made. Lastly, transference stage. In this stage, the patients begin to react towards the analyst as he or she were an important person in his or her life. The patient might distaste past or present feelings towards someone from his or her own life onto analyze. The feelings that patient might show towards analyze either positive or negative. The idea behind transference is interpersonal problems between a patient and important person in life will be reenacted in therapy session with analyze, which in simple words, the patient is sharing or transferring their problems or conflict by putting emotions that originally felt during therapy session with the analyze. Freud called this repetition compulsion, which is person reenacted interpersonal problems with new people. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Daniel, and today I'm going to introduce you to the importance of psychoanalysis. For most of 20th century, Freud's idea had a major impact on people. Next, we will explain through 4 points. First one, the psychoanalytic thinking is now influencing the practice of psychotherapy. The second largest department of American Psychology Association is the psychoanalysis department. The basic idea of talk therapy can be traced back to Freud, so you can understand how important this is. And it has very high standards so far. Even if the psychotherapist does not perform classical psychoanalysis, many people still rely on some psychoanalytic ideas. Second, research psychologists interested in topics such as unconsciousness and defense mechanisms is recovering. Although they may not agree with all Freud theories, the researchers are still seeking empirical support for some of his ideas. You can see that what is truly viable does not change with time. It is still shining. Third, many Freud's ideas had been incorporated into everyday language, as well as the logical of understand our own and the behavior of others. For example, if someone say he can't get along with the teacher because he has conflict with associate, this comment will lead to Freud thinking, or if someone experiences threats correctly problems as a result of poor parenting, then this is Freud's expression, so it is not useless. On the contrary, it is everywhere in our daily life. Fourth, the last reason why Freud's ideas are important is because he laid the foundation for many exams and problems that psychologists are solving. He put forward the department sequence of personality growth. He devotes a method to resolve internal conflicts. So you can imagine that without it, the contemporary field of psychology may not develop as it is today. Finally, I want to say that Freud started a more interesting, influential, and even controversial method to understand human nature. Therefore, even if this theory does not play an important role in contemporary personality research, no personality learner should skip this theory. Thanks for listening.